We'll find out something.
Please sit here.
Extra chairs.
नहीं बंद
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining here for the talk, which is a part of the global scholar talk series of MICA Center for Research Excellence in Marketing. And in this talk series, we invite senior scholars doing great research to share their ideas on some specialized topics. Today we have Sundeep Sahay, distinguished professor from University of Oxford, and I just try to make as brief as possible about Professor Sahay, talk about the kind of work he does. He is primarily doing on drawing from action research framework. His research is focusing on how to make digital innovation sustainable in the public system, particularly public healthcare. It's a focus of work, and his outcomes have appeared in top tier journals including some 50s and Get Meeting, and he is also currently a senior editor in one of the 50 journals. So it's glad to have you, sir. And in the audience, we have technical scholars, research associates, and scientific colleagues. We look forward to your talk. When we had an opportunity to host sir, we thought he could share experience on doing action research, right? But then we were working out, and then he said that it would be nice if we can talk about a very important concept of hope, right? How hope matters in action research, and not just in action, but as a part of our research. Right? So we look forward to this talk, sir. After the talk, we'll have questions.
Firstly, thank you everyone for coming. And I think it has been overwhelming the last 24 hours hospitality and the warmth of its research. We've been really struck by the warmth. And I think there is diversity of this can be another addition to the multidisciplinarity thing we talk about. So my original idea was to talk only about hope. And then when I said I speak to the technology and development and action research, so I've got those things together. Very messy conversation. I'm not trying to do it. This is good. At least, I hope so.
So do you need?
I don't need, but if you...
Yes, we are not able to.
It's not being heard.
We can continue.
So there are three different pieces of things. There's hope, there is action research, and there is technology and development. So the three domains which we try to bring together. So one is to start with the lay understanding of hope, build it up into a more theoretical understanding of hope, and then discuss how hope maybe can provide the basis to stimulate action research, some models of action research which we talk about in the literature, and if time permits, and empirical experience to illustrate some of these ideas. A lay understanding of hope. I think both hope and lack of it. We talked about Manchester City hoping that the literature or India doing well in the cricket. We're hoping, and then we also have to think of the world that's being hopeless. So Roberta Solnit, I think we've written a very beautiful book called Hope in the Dark. She said, hope does not mean to deny realities, but it is a force to engage with realities. So hope is about future, it is about uncertainty, and it always comes with specific possibilities for us to act. So hope is not, it's not about the enlightenment kind of hope we talk about, because it is accompanied with critical thinking. If we don't accompany hope with critical thinking, it is cynicism, and or without critical thinking, it becomes naivety. So digital initiatives, when we talk about digital initiatives, they always come with visions of hope. So hope by definition is about the future. So it becomes uncertainty. We are dealing with uncertainty, and in this uncertainty there are spaces for action. So for optimists, the future is offered without their involvement. So we think anyway this is going to happen. And for pessimists, it's no longer what they do, nothing is going to happen. So Malcolm X famously said that the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. But hope is only something which gets you there, to reach you to the possibilities of action, but you will work to achieve it. Coming now to the sort of the linkages between hope and action research, hope and action are always entangled. It's a political entanglement. Political actions are often legitimized by politicians as grand hopes. For example, the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, was about promising the hope of democracy, Western democracy to these countries. Prime Minister Modi is talking about digital transformation of the human race. But these are what we call grand hopes or utopian hopes, which are difficult to achieve in practice. When we are all talking about sustainability today, sustainability is always fundamentally about the orientation to the future, and there are alternative visions of hope, and there are alternative visions that are going to be political disagreements. Greta Thunberg, she invoked the idea of lost hope. She blamed the political leaders in a UN meeting on how political leaders are ruining the dreams and hopes of younger generation. So hope can lead to, when you talk about more realistic hope can lead to small steps, small actions, many of them with unanticipated effects. Research on hope is very limited in the domains of our domains of information systems, technology and development. A lot of the research comes from theology and philosophy and cognitive psychology. I recently came across this paper by Gordon. He talks about the information sources of hope. So hope can describe 4 different kinds of hopes. Information is for healing. One is for healing understanding. The second is about moral imagination. So what is right, what is wrong. Third is about desire. To stimulate something internally and deep into. And third is about metacognition, thinking about the cause of causes and the reasons for reasons. There's next to nothing written about hope in RNAs. This was a starting point. We wrote this book. It was about digital development, stories of hope from health and social development. So we basically written about a number of cases in health and social development, which were successful to a certain degree, and we retrospectively tried to understand what made them successful and to link them with the idea of hope. So when we try to theorize hope, I was drawn to Arjun Upadhyay, you're familiar with, and he's an Indian anthropologist living in America who talks about the capacity to aspire. I was attracted to him, to his writing, because when we talk about technology for development, a lot of our discussion is rooted in the past. Why things do not work. There are cultural problems, there are governance problems, there are all kinds of problems. So his argument, which I really align with, is that if we are only going to be locked up in the past, it restricts our imagination of the future. You know, what we can aspire for the future. There's a story which I heard that development, WHO or World Bank people went to Kenya and they asked people, what would you like, what new developments you would like in your village in Africa. So one old man said, I would like a new airport in my village. Why do you want the airport when you got my water, you got my roads? If we have an airport where my son can come and visit me, I have not seen him for the last 20 years. So that was his aspiration. And sometimes I think when we are too much locked into why things did not work in the past, we don't allow people to imagine new possibilities, new future. So this was my starting point to think about hope. So there's a very interesting book, chapter by Roman State, debating the politics of hope. So he builds a theoretical mapping of hope based on two ideas: hope by Ernst Bloch, capabilities by MICA Ahmedabad, voice, Albert Hirschman, and the atrophy of poverty by Oscar Lewis. So hope was something, Bloch was a German sociologist who wrote in the in the context of post-World War II in Germany. So his idea was simple that hope is something about the not yet, something which has not been achieved, which we seek to achieve. So he says that hope is a capacity which we can learn. It is not something which is inherent. So life goes on in the existing conditions, existing situations, hope is always in the air. So hope is pervasive in the actuality of the present, and the present will not make sense if you don't think about hope for the future. So his idea was that hope is something which we can learn to achieve the not yet. Capabilities from Amartya Sen. So Sen has given a whole bunch of capabilities in Marxism, and to that Apadurai develops the capacity to aspire. So his idea is that the capacity to aspire is cultural and it is unevenly distributed. The different people have different capacities to aspire. And Apadurai argues that his idea of culture is different from Sen's conceptualization of capabilities, which is very universal, which is very procedural, which is when he talks about freedom, and unfreedom is a state removing thing basically. But for Apadurai, the capacity to aspire is not something universal, it is not something procedural, it is something cultural which we develop through our own experiences. So he quotes Clifford Gibbs very famously to say that to be human is to be Javanese. So Clifford Gibbs did his anthropology in Java. And so his thing is you have to be both local and global at the same time. To address the dilemma of how you can be both at the same time, Apadurai describes, he distinguishes between a basic humanity and a full humanity. So basic humanities could be something around the basic rights, and full humanity is also taking larger cultural capacities. Voice is the third concept in this conceptual frame by Albert Hirschman. So Albert Hirschman, I think in his very famous book, he says that when people are faced with unfavorable circumstances, it may be relevant in your discussion on marketing. So when you're unhappy with the product or unhappy with the service, you can either raise voice or you can exit. Right? If exit is easily available, there is less motivation to raise voice. But, voice is something more expensive, something more difficult, because it involves invoking collective action, while exit can be a private action. And if you have loyalty, then that limits voice. So exit is more relevant in market spheres, while voice in more political spheres. But I think it's interesting if we talk about, say, rural villages in Bihar or something, they really don't have the possibility of either exit or voice. Atrophy of poverty is another interesting idea by Oscar Lewis. So Appadurai says aspiration is like a muscle. It needs to be exercised. Should it be underused? Should there be no history of success, no role models, no cultural traditions? No, there will be no habitual aspiration. Then the possibility of imagining change will also be limited. So he says rich people, because they constantly have the experience of their aspirations being met, they have more ability to aspire for change. While poor people who do not have these experiences, positive experiences to go with, it is more difficult for them to aspire change. So that's his argument that aspiration is culturally determined. Thomas Erickson, who was one of the co-authors in the book, says there is paucity of hope in affluent societies such as Norway, which are already flushed with plenty. So I think the takeaway from this idea of atrophy of poverty is there's important role of prior experiences in shaping future experiences. So this is just a summary of this framework. Aspiration as a capacity, as a practice to imagine future. Hope is something that we focus on learning to reach something which we have not yet got. Voice is the space of action when we are unhappy with something. And atrophy of poverty is how experiences shape future aspirations. So some of the domains of relevance of hope when we talk about, so ICT for D is how do you situate aspiration as a capacity in the framework of Amartya Sen's capabilities. Sustainability studies, when we are talking about the future, design studies, how do you incorporate the aspirations of users in systems which we design and develop, models of capacity building, where we don't focus on just the immediate skills to run a technology, but the capabilities, or what you said in the morning, sir, about freedoms of the mind, and how do we engage with, how can hope become a driver for collective action. So I think these are some of the domains I can think of where hope can stimulate. So this was the first part, the hope part. Next is the action research part. I think one of my inspirations for action research is Abhay Bam, who is based in, I think, around Gadchiroli in Maharashtra. So he said after 30 years of working in tribal areas, he founded this NGO called Search. He says, go to the people, live among them, love them, learn from them, begin with what they know, build upon what they have, imagine the problem of problem solving in India. So he said that should be the ethos of action research. So not to conduct research only to gratify our own intellectual capacity and curiosity, but to bring change and make the world a better place. And here, I think many years ago, we were working with slum dwellers in Bangalore, and we met an activist who was trying to empower the slum dwellers with information. When we met him, he got really angry, and he said, "You people are just reinventing colonization. You are coming here to collect the data, to go back and write your papers and get your promotions and get your PhDs, but nothing ever comes back to us. It really stayed with me, his comment. If I look at our PhD students, and I think I've graduated about 35 students over the last 20 years, and though they all talk about action research, but I see very little actually flowing back to the organization in which they are supposed to be doing action research. So he says there are three types of cultural types of action of research. One is for the people, third is by the people, and third is with the people. It's just as the formal medical process is to ask the patient what is troubling you, to understand the history. Similarly, when we are dealing with a social science problem, this is the way we have to start. But often what happens is we have our own theoretical problems in our head, which we go and try to find solutions for. So when we are talking of research on the people, yes, you take informed consent from the people, but these are just precautionary measures, because you need to get an ethical clearance to do your research. But there is no power in the hands of the patients. You get data on the people, but the intellectual property as well as the power to interpret and publish is yours. Research for the people, it is a little better than the first approach, but this research seeks to understand a genuine problem faced by the people and to solve it. But neither do they really understand what you're doing, or do they have a say in how you do it. So this is research for the people. And research with the people is the most, he says, the most genuine form of action research. This approach shares power with the people. When people provide you with the questions or questions emerge through your observations and dialogues, you involve people in collecting the data, report your findings to them, develop a solution that involves them, it enables them, it serves them. So these are three different kinds of research. I think from the least action research to the most action research, if you'd like to call it. This is a traditional definition, I think, of action research in IS research. Action research aims to contribute to some practical concerns in an intermediate problematic situation and the goals of social science by joint collaboration within the mutually agreed ethical framework. So there, I think there are two parts of action research. One is the spirit and one is the letter. The letter you can think of the methodology, and spirit you can think of the ideology, which is guiding. So the ideology, you must have a guiding ideology when you're doing action research. Whether it's hope, whether it is making the world a better place, bringing about organization change, there has to be a guiding ideology. And by definition, it has to be multidisciplinarity involving true collaboration. Why action research often fails? I think the most common thing is I've seen with PhD students is we focus on your problem as a researcher, something that is abstract, something that is theoretically elegant, but not a priority for the organization. You equate conducting action, for example, doing training or system building, with doing action research, which is not the case. You collaborate only to gain access, but not more on the research process. The primary concern of research is your outputs, thesis, papers, promotion, etc., but not to change practice. We lack multidisciplinarity. I think in ICTs, the problem is we get too focused on the artifact, and I think in our discussions with the PhD students, I think we discussed in many cases, I think we get too focused on the artifact. And often it is post hoc, when we are writing up your thesis, we try to package it as an action research study. And there's an absence of an ideology of change. Why you want to do it at a more fundamental level? So there are at least three dilemmas. I think one is balancing between letter and spirit. Letter is the methodology. So to show compliance with the different academic methodologies for which you are going to be asked questions in your Viva exam. And spirit is the underlying ideology. Balancing between rigor and action. Yeah. This is an ongoing debate in IS research. And a common problem is too much action, too little research. Adopting a colonial approach, which I just mentioned, about using the site only to collect data. So it leads a failure both in letter and in spirit. We don't do good action research and we don't achieve change and we don't have a guiding ideology. It's important to have theory to guide action research. And whatever is your theoretical intervention. For example, if we invoke hope as a theoretical device when we talk about action research, some of the questions we can think about is what makes the situation hopeless? We've discussed in the morning with many people about climate and health. Many things make it hopeless. So important to understand what are those barriers, structural barriers, social barriers, information barriers which contribute to this hopelessness. What kind of, if you're talking specifically about technology, what kind of role can the digital play in making some of these invisibilities more visible? Whose interests are being served, whose interests are being undermined through this visibility of information? Because there are many people who would have interests to keep the problem invisible. How can we mobilize collective action based on visibility of information? How can small outcomes be created in incremental steps to create larger change? So theory is vital, and I think depending on your individual choices, you can think about how your theory will guide action research. There are many different models. I think since mine told me to do a little tutorial on action research, this is the boring part. Many different models, starting from the Tavistock Institute in the 40s, post-World War II. Enid Mumford was a famous social scientist in the University of Manchester, who brought in the social technical approach. This was primarily to counsel people coming out of trauma from the war. It has been extensively applied for evaluation studies, and they published a journal called Human Relations, a very well-respected journal. I think yesterday you were asking about.
Only 350 that we said. Human Relations is part of the financial diagram.
I think he is obsessed with this.
We all are, yes, sir.
Yeah, luckily I'm not. So, coming from Tavistock in this for social technical approach, the Scandinavian approach is also a very interesting approach to action research, which is primarily around the idea of workplace democracy. And interesting that this idea of workplace democracy was contractual. It was defined by the Parliament as a contractual obligation of management to that workers must have a say in what technologies are introduced into the workplace. So there was a very famous project on the iron and metal union when this. So Christian Nicol was a very interesting man. I mean, he was the person who formed our department at the University of Warsaw. He was also the person who led the whole referendum against joining the EU. So very multifaceted man, influenced largely by Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed, and very Marxist in his approach. And this is also the Scandinavian approach is what I've been working with under this action research program called HISP, Health Information Systems Program, which was initiated in the mid-90s in South Africa when in 1994 when the new government, the ANC government came in, and they had a very strong agenda to reform the health health systems based on reformed health information systems to make it more decentralized, empowering the health workers, making it more unified, reducing the burden on health workers. So that has been the foundation of the HIS program, which I've worked with for the last 25 years. So this action research program we wrote in 2004, a paper called Networks of Action. It was primarily talking about emancipation of the coalface. It brought together two streams of research. One was the Scandinavian workplace democracy and the South African anti-apartheid struggle. So the theory of change was very much about linking aspects of sustainability with scalability. The assumption being if systems don't scale, they don't sustain. Because for a health worker, for a health manager, you need data for the whole population, not just pockets. So if I want to know what is the full immunization of the catchment population, I need data from all health facilities, not a few pilot studies. And the other starting assumption was that we learn better in collectives than in isolated single units. So the other aspects of the HIS program was that systems were built and implemented by nurses who were directly involved in providing care. But over time, over the last 25 years, that ideology which was there in South Africa has gradually eroded. And as the program has become more successful, more money, so now they earn about $15 million a year to keep this program going. It's becoming more like a constituency, which was my sense of disillusionment. And the public health, which was a crucial domain of the action research program, has slowly got washed away and dominated by technologies and a focus on the artifact. Then there's another model of action research. Maybe some of you are familiar with Peter Checklin's work from the University of Lancaster. So his idea was that we need to first define the problem as a rich picture, take the different competing interests in the problem and try to make a picture of how these interests are playing out, and then talk to the people to get an agreement on the rich picture before you start to act on it. And it's basically based on systems thinking, of looking at the interconnection between different parts. This is one of the most popular models in ICT and IS research, which is called the canonical action research. So they point out to these 5 different steps: diagnosing, action planning, action taking, evaluating, specifying learning, and employee system architecture. So most of your ICT for day papers, they will ask you to refer to this. It's a problem because it's very linear. Things don't happen in such linear ways. Client system architecture is the relation between the reader and the system where you want to change. In most cases, it's not a formal agreement, but it's based on trust, it's based on social capital which you may have. So I don't like this model at all, but it is something which, if you have your thesis well packaged in this, the reviewers get impressed. So this is, but these are 5 principles of canonical action research. One is you must have a researcher-client agreement, there should be a cyclical process, there should be use of theory, change through action, learning through reflection. But the way it is described is often in a very linear manner. So, what model of action research to choose? Like I said, there's a great diversity of models, principles, approaches. I think it's not too important to get lost in the methodology. I think it's because if you get too lost in the methodology, like trying to show how you comply to these 5 principles, you lose the spirit. So it's important to find the balance between letter and spirit, between methodology and ideology, between rigor and relevance. If you get too lost in the rigor, you lose the relevance. So in terms of theory of change, I think go back to what makes no sense to you, which speaks to you. What are your research questions? What do you want to study? What do you need to understand? And of course, it's guided by your theoretical and methodological orientations. You may be a sociologist by training, you may be a psychologist, you may be a quantitative person. So you naturally have different orientations, both methodologically and theoretically. So you have to see what speaks best to you and how best they answer the research question you come up with. So this is the last part. I'm okay on time? Yeah. I'll tell a little bit about empirical experience from India, which Mayank and Rajesh have also been involved with, and also you. You and Himanshu. Yeah. So this is a project which started in 2010, which was the design, development, implementation, support of a network of hospitals, about 20 plus district public hospitals in the state of Himachal Pradesh. It's a little map and different districts. It's a very difficult terrain in terms of geography, in terms of from Shimla to travel to Kinnaur, maybe 2 days on bus through very difficult roads. You keep hearing about landslides and buses stopping over, and so it's a difficult terrain, though it looks small. So it's a very long story. It's over 15 years. I'm not going to tell the story. I'm going to highlight some aspects or mechanisms of hope. So this whole project started in the aftermath of the UPA government coming into power in 2005, 2006, and they were fundamentally involved in. They had a fundamental political agenda to strengthen the public health system, to include the poor and marginalized into the public health system. They wanted to increase our contribution of the health budgets to the GDP from 1.1 to 4%. They did manage to increase it to about 2% before the BJP reversed that trend. And they wanted to bring in architectural corrections to make systemic improvements into different things, including the health information systems. And they set up this new institution called the National Rural Health Mission, which over time has become the National Health Mission. And digital systems were a core part of this vision. So when this was happening, I was at Oslo and I was seconded by my university to work with the Ministry of Health for guiding the reform process. So I was the national advisor on health information system, and I was there for close to 3 years working on this. And I promised never to go back after that 3-year experience, because all what we did was quickly undone by the new government. The first thing was the MOU which was created was a source of inspiration, which aspirations. So there was a interesting group of IAS officers at the central level, including Dr. Abhijit Singh, who were guiding this NRHM vision and policies. And that translated at the state level in Himachal. There was a mission director, Prof, who was an activist. He was basically an activist first working with the Shiksha Abhiyan. So initially the government made a tender, which I would say promoted utopian hope. They wanted everything to become digital, paperless, allow people from home to log in and book appointments, and even had ideas of using technologies where doctors can just speak and it gets digitized into text, etc. The tender failed. 53 companies applied to that, and they couldn't match the requirements financially and technically. Then this mission director, he approached me, he said, Sundeep, can you do something here? We had no idea of hospital information systems. We had been working in the state on the primary care systems, but on hospital systems we had no idea. I said, okay, let's give it a try. Both the state did not know what are hospital information systems which are practical, and we as developers did not know. So it was interesting the way he crafted the MOU. So the MOU, unlike typical public sector MOU, said that requirements will not be predefined in the MOU. The requirements will evolve as the project goes along. So giving spaces for both the health system and for us to learn about what each other knows. So the MD leveraging on this uncertainty about what is a hospital information system created this very innovative MOU in the context of public health systems, which typically work with predefined requirements, deliverables, and proprietary systems. So here we identified evolving requirements as a contractual aspect of the MOU. We mandated the use of free and open source softwares, which also allows you to look at the future and be able to evolve as the future unfolds. And it was people rather than deliverables. So they said you install a team of 5 people in Himachal, and they are responsible for everything, okay? From building the system to implementing it to training it to all kinds of other things. So there was no contractual hassles about I'm supposed to do this, I'm not supposed to do that, which I think was very innovative. So it created a clear space to build this capacity to aspire. There were inherent barriers, high patient loads, 1,500 a day, doctor getting 2 to 3 minutes per patient. There were extreme manpower and infrastructure limitations, high disease burdens, next to no digital experience, next to no digital infrastructure, and extremely difficult mountainous terrain to be able to provide this technical support. There's some pictures to give you a sense of the context. So how did we try to operationalize these capacities to aspire? One is local presence. I think local presence was fundamental. So we set up a team in Himachal based typically local youth who were committed to the cause because their families were impacted. They had the motivation. And initially, to learn about the technology, which was called Open NRS, Open Medical Record Systems, we didn't have the capacity, so we drew upon the open source community to get experts in this domain to teach the local team. Subsequently, a training team was set up of 5 local young enthusiastic boys with strong aspirations to strengthen health services in the state because they had a stake in it. Their old parents and uncles and aunties were living over. I think this concept of co-production is an interesting concept. It's different from participatory design. So co-production is about co-design involving different people, where you imagine new socio-technical futures. So for example, the hospital had first different departments did their own billing. So billing for radiology, billing for labs, etc. Then the hospital suggested that in this way we don't know what is the total revenues for the hospital. Let's try to centralize the billing system. So the technology had to be redesigned to support a centralized billing system. So the idea is, typically when we talk about participatory design, it is very much focused on the artifact. How do you build the artifact? But here we are also trying to reimagine how the hospital will work with in the future and what can be the role of technology in supporting this. And it was a very incremental approach. So we didn't take big risks, no big bangs. Start one module in one hospital, second module, third module, get it working in one hospital before moving it to the next hospital. So we were always minimizing the risks of failure by going through in small steps. And I think mobility was extremely crucial to cultivate this aspiration. The trainers would, someone would from Kinnaur or someone from Chamba would call and say, oh, my printer is not working. They didn't have the knowledge to do team viewers, to show it online. Someone had to travel by bus. And it may have been a small problem. The wraps have eaten away the wires, which needed to be fixed. But I think it had great symbolic relevance that people were available when they needed them. So the continuous presence made trainers part of the family, part of the state, part of the family. There was a strong sense of solidarity which grew over time. And training was, typically in government, the training is training of trainers. A new system comes, you train them, and then people go in the field and everyone is conducted. But what we've seen, there's also Amartya Sen's distinction between capacity and capability is you need different mental models to understand what they need and to be able to, so like an alien would say that I want to learn the internet because then I can teach my son how to run the internet. Or Excel helps me to make my budgets at home. Or it helps me to write my leave letter. So it was much beyond their immediate work of sending a report. But it was giving them skills to do other things, which is exactly what Sen describes as capabilities. And because of this presence, temporal and spatial, I think it created trust in engaging with the future. Visibility was, I would say, is a carrier of hope. So we started to do quarterly refresher trainings. So every quarter in every hospital we would go show them their data, show them the gaps, show them the positives, show them these are areas to fill. So visibility started to act as a basis for hope. Because when they saw that, they could imagine other things they could do with the information. The state got a National Innovation Award in Srinagar, which again helped them to take pride in what they had achieved and aspire for more. So this was one example of the kind of report we would show to a hospital on a quarterly basis, key statistics and tell them both the positives and negatives. So, in summary, like we could see the capacity to aspire. These were 5 key aspects by which capacity to aspire was realized in practice. One is the governance structure, talking about the MOU, and I think Himachal has been very special in that over the last 15 years. People have come and new governments have come, new mission directors, but somehow this system has been allowed to continue over the last 15 years. So they keep giving us 1-year MOUs, 2 years MOUs, but they keep extending it and extending it and extending it. So there has been a continuity in the governance by mistake or whatever, and I think uncertainty was always used as a basis to stimulate action. Co-production or participatory design was the basis to co-create social-technical future imaginaries. Visibility of data acted as a carrier of hope. And I think open source technologies was a very important aspect because it allowed you to make choices in the present which did not preclude future action. So if I use a particular licensed software, but 2 years later the technology has changed and I cannot adapt it, I cannot integrate it with the new system, it dies. And that has typically been the story of many information systems in the health sector. So some personal reflections. I heard about HISP more than 25 years ago. I moved to Oslo. I carried hope to contribute to development. Like I said, over time my hopes, personal hopes, gradually eroded because I thought I could not adequately answer the question if ICTs are improving the health outcomes of people. I could say that now the DHIS2, which is running in 80 countries, but what difference it has made in those 80 countries, I could not answer because our research focus was very artifact-based. So it raised some troubling questions for me. Was technology disabling the aspirations of the marginalized? Are our theories and methods evolving at in pace which does not understand user aspirations? And then questions of whose hopes are we talking about? Does that create false hopes? But personally, I mean, there was this larger erosion of hope, but I developed a lot of competencies, I think, in terms of how do you build these capacities to aspire, in terms of participatory design methods, models of training, importance of openness in terms of software, data, etc. These are things which I learned during my journey. So my current work is this, antimicrobial resistance, in which a lot of those learnings I am taking in. Okay? So AMR, I think, is I've been talking about it to whoever I met. It represents a particularly hopeless situation in India. India is the global hotspot for antimicrobial resistance. The biggest producer, the biggest consumer, the biggest exporter of this poison. So the research agenda is very much what we have been working on now for 5 years in Himachal, in Bihar. Is how do you make the problem of AMR more visible? I think this is a very simple research agenda, research question. And then the second part of this question is how can this visibility be translated into action? At two levels we are interested in right now. One is at the level of policy in the hospital, where they are mandatorily required to set up hospital infection control committees. So we want that data to flow in to this process of working of the hospital infection control committee. And second is at the level of the clinicians, when they prescribe antibiotics, to have a better evidence based on what are the strengths and weaknesses of different antibiotics. So we are working on this in different hospitals, 5 hospitals in Himachal, 10 hospitals in Bihar. So also the problem of scaling. You build it, you scale it functionally, and scale it also geographically. I think this is my, I hope let the time things. Yes. So if you have time, you
Maybe a couple of questions from the audience.
I have. So, first of all, fascinating. By the way, did you hear?
Yeah.
Fascinating talk. And I love the way in which you take the capabilities approach and take it to the next level, which is a hope, right? And I have some, I think as I mentioned to you, I have some familiarity with this because I did work with what they said as his research assistant on this project. But it seems to me that this layer of hope takes it to the next level. And the aspiration is the word that I like to use better than hope. Because hope has an element of chance in it. That ho jaye, you hope that the environment will conspire to make it happen. But aspiration is when you actually make it happen, but you don't necessarily put a timeline to it, because it's such a big thing. And Aurobindo's interpretation of the Rig Veda is exactly this, that it's a man's journey for aspiration, from darkness into light, from hopelessness into hope. And the symbol of that is Agni, the flame of aspiration. Right? We always talk about the flame of aspiration. And not only that, there is a divine facilitator in the form of a bird. And I didn't realize this. I'm fascinated by Iqbal's poetry, right? And he uses the metaphor of Shaheen, the peregrine falcon, with shining eyes, as the instrument of the divine that makes aspirations possible. Little did I realize that that same word, shame, for the peregrine falcon in the Rig Veda, is used in the Persian tradition called Shaheen. And Shaheen is the metaphor that he uses all the time for the flame of aspiration. So aspiration, more than even hope, more than capabilities, is at the core of the Indian way of expressing progress.
How do you reconcile this with fate?
How do you reconcile with fate? Well, fate is the dialectical process with which you have to engage without necessarily knowing what is the pace of change. You know the change is going to happen, but you don't know the timeline of change. So I like the other phrase in your talk, operating in the space of uncertainty. In the course that I teach on entrepreneurship, I say where there is full information, there is no opportunity. Where there is uncertainty, there is opportunity. So aspiration is diving into uncertainty, full of confidence about your capabilities, so that you can start.
No, I think I'm fascinated by the whole thing of uncertainty. I mean, if you look at back at COVID, it was completely uncertain of what's happening, why is it happening, and it led to many different kinds of possibilities of action, good and bad. And I think it is about engaging with these possibilities in a experimental way which can allow innovations to develop. I'm fascinated by this idea of uncertainty, and I think if you look at the big challenges the world is facing, climate or environment, etc., we really don't know what's going to happen. So this guy whom we quote on, he says the first step of building this aspiration is building understanding. When these different people are talking about climate, positives, negatives, whether they believe in climate science or don't believe, we as individuals need to build our own understanding of what it is, what are the specific realities, what are the possibilities for action in this. And I found that very powerful.
More than a question, it is a kind of conversation. And this comes from your last slide, where you say that you have become pessimistic. That whatever you have done, whether it has changed or not, whereas whatever you have projected, especially the case aspect, the change is visible. So why pessimist?
Why pessimist? I think pessimist is more with my engagement as a researcher at the university also. What I've seen is a transformation. I mean, the original agenda in 1999 when I started, it was about how do we include the marginalized into mainstream development processes. I was inspired a lot by Manuel Castells and those kinds of things. But as the model of money has changed, previously our work was all being done through research money. But now global donors have got involved and they are funding the whole thing. So the focus has shifted in many ways, which I'm not comfortable with. The focus is on the artifact primarily, the focus is on the Norwegians building the artifact, not the people in countries who are supposed to be using it. So I think Norway is too culturally and physically distant from the sites of action. So I feel we are not really able to bring in a serious way the voices of people who we want to change.
My counterpoint there will be that that is the dilemma of growing up. Because if I start something small with 4 of my friends, so there is no management or business aspect. But the moment I start growing and I go to 106 countries, then the business aspect comes.
Yeah.
So but the business aspect, so for example, you take Communist Party. It is a business organization. So at the center of this, it's not intended, but sometimes we intellectual, we get into as an ideology. I'm not using the word as a caste word, but in Brahminism mode of thinking, that where we want to be pure, but when we go into the world, we cannot be. We have to become Kshatriya and we have to become Rashtra. If I can take up that. So I think that disillusionment is that I don't know. I personally think that it should not be this.
No,
Like this.
I think maybe as an academic also, I'm making choices on what I find most relevant for me to engage with. As it has become more business-like, I don't want to be part of that. I'm not making a value judgment on, a value judgment on that's good or bad. I understand when you need 100 people, 100 countries to deal with, you need to have that business structure, etc. I don't want to be part of that. So my work now in Himachal, as I'm reaching my end of my academic life, and so I just want to focus on small hospitals, grassroots work, on an important problem. Previously I worked in 30 different countries in Africa and here and there. I want to keep my attention now on a smaller scale to a place where I relate to India within the public health system and try to make a difference there. So it's not about disillusionment with what's going on. I think that's a trajectory, maybe that's the capitalist trajectory which cannot be prevented. And as Marx said, capitalism is its own grave digger, and maybe the dialectics will show things to change. But I don't want to be engaged in that process.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
First of all, thank you so much for the lovely talk. So much to get out of this and very close to my heart and my work, which is the greater good to doing the work together in the public sector. So thank you for the wonderful set of things that you do. My question is more from the operational point of view, and as a research university, and of course when we are working closely with the government. One, you already talked about change the world, changes the focus, and of course is if we are in the midst of this, how to save lives. Second, how much time and what are the ways to get into the iteration, because of course you have to go back and forth, reaching out to them, taking their feedback, and so how does this iteration work? So what is your experience in these two?
I think the experience is you have to treat time as timeless. I think it just goes on with different rhythms, and new government will come, maybe for 1 year nothing will happen, and suddenly things will happen. And, so if you're working in a mode of a software company, where you have a project, you have deliverables, you have money, and there's a finite life of that project. I don't think it works with the public system. I think you have to just let it flow the way it flows. And there are some mission directors or secretaries who come who will be very negative, okay, you pack up, you go, and then for 1 year you don't get paid to people's salaries, etc. But suddenly something changes, a new guy comes and or woman comes and it starts going again. So I think it's very important to untrain your mind in terms of temporal sort of timelines of typical projects. So these 5-6 people I talked to, Himachal guys.
Also like the idea of incremental change, which is really fascinating because usually as a researcher we want to bring something, like very sooner manner of things happening, showcase, especially in the corporate university, bring something but this incremental change, especially when the audience is too vast, especially for the marginalized.
I mean, if you look at COVID and Arogya Setu, big bang, whole country to use this system from tomorrow. Never works. Never works. You have to do it small steps, get people to own it, for people to see value. If I do this, I can do, which allows me to hope for more. I can do this.
So the focus remains on the beneficiaries of this.
No. I think that's a weakness. I mean, for us, the end users are the people in the hospital, the workers in the hospital, the nurses, the physicians, the lab technicians. We haven't touched the people. We've not
Is that
had.
the idea?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. So, in this AMA work, we are very consciously talking to households. So we have identified with the health system which are the high infection areas, and then we are doing household interviews over there. How do you access antibiotics? Then in another site in Himachal where we are looking at migrant workers, we are going in and talking to them. So now I think that has been a lack in this work. I think. The end users are not the people, but now we are trying to do that. It's very complex because it's so spread out. I mean, a typical research will be one organization, one hospital. Say, for example, what mine did for his PhD. It's so much more structured and bounded, but in a hospital network, it's totally unbounded.
So as aspiring researchers, like I'm a research associate, so you talk about like having some ideological foundations to guide your research, but in the scientific tradition we are taught about maintaining value neutrality or having that scientific outlook by which we go. So I just want to ask you, like, how do we maintain that value neutrality or value relevance while having some kind of ideological basis for our
I
research?
think value neutrality is a myth.
But that is what we are taught now.
Yeah, maybe I'm not denying that, but to say that we as researchers are value neutral and we are, it has been debunked, this value neutrality by the whole tradition of social science and technology studies. And when Marx writes as his book, of course he wanted to change society. He's challenging the economic order. So I personally I don't believe that we are value neutral. I think we always have. When I'm presenting this, there are certain things which I'm trying to push onto you. I'm not being neutral at all.
So in contrast to like value neutrality,
If I can just, in the interest of time, I think we have to rest our time to time. Just one last question.
So this is a more philosophical question. Do you think hope and pessimism are the two ends of the same spectrum, given that hope appreciates and ends with pessimism? Where pessimism is more rational and practical, while hope contains elements of faith, aspiration, and optimism.
I think we have to look at hope in action to think about that. When we talk about pessimism, it is when we believe there's no point in doing any action, this will happen. and the optimist will say, even if I don't do anything, this will happen. So I think it's not maybe not appropriate to talk of them as dimensional models.
So we have two gifts for you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Sahay, IFKM co-chairs, President, Dean, and all the faculty members, as well as the doctoral scholars and research associates that are present here. We have learned a lot through your nuanced idea of hope and how it translates into action research, as well as your empirical understandings and real-life examples of what you did in India. I'm pretty sure that it will guide all of us in our respective research orientations, as well as help us in our future research projects. So thank you so much for your time, sir, and we are actually really grateful for your wonderful talk today.
Thank you. Thank you all of you to hear me out.
So we have a gift for you that will remind you of the ultimate action researcher, Mikhail. This is the signature of Gandhi in 10 scripts.
Oh wow.
That we have custom carved.
Thank you everyone.
Thank you. And then I'll take 2 more minutes. And I promise that I'll read you this poem, just 10 lines. So this is from a Punjabi poet. His name was Avtar Singh Sandhu. He was killed by Pakistanis. He wrote a poem called, this is in Punjabi, it's called Kirat Se Khatarnak Khun. This is Sabse Khatarnak is the poem. मेहनत की लूट सबसे खतरनाक नहीं होती, पुलिस की मार सबसे खतरनाक नहीं होती, गद्दारी लोभ की मुट्ठी सबसे खतरनाक नहीं होती, सबसे खतरनाक होता है मुर्दा शांति से भर जाना, न होना तड़प का सब सहन कर जाना, घर से निकलना काम पर और काम से लौट कर घर जाना, सबसे खतरनाक होता है हमारे सपनों का मर जाना। In Punjabi it is sab to khatarnak hunda hai saade sukhiyan da mar jana. I have not yet.
So I think this pen name is Pash.
Thank you everyone.
Whatever possible, we can hear that.
Maybe you know that the best thing is on there and he stands here and from here.
I just come closer towards the center.